Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome to another edition of Talkin Ball. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by fellow lifetime Longhorn CJ Vogel. What's going on, CJ? How you doing, brother?
Hey, happy Monday. College football never stops. I'm ready for it. Another day.
Yeah, no doubt. It feels like, I guess when your team is good, it never stops. Maybe you want to break from it if your team isn't very good. But the Longhorns, damn good. So we're talking a lot of Texas football, of course. There is a new defensive analyst name that has been hired. We got to talk about that. Also, I don't know how it keeps coming up. There's another horns down controversy. Don't know how it happened. I want to get CJ's thoughts about it too. He had a hot take about it. We'll get into it. We'll also talk about the Super Bowl because obviously there are some Texas ties to the Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan, lifetime Longhorn, a good friend of mine. He is a head coach for the 49ers, which are back in the Super Bowl versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Also some Texas ties there. And my man Charles Amena, who used to play for the 49ers, also now plays for the Chiefs. He had a strip sack above Lamar Jackson in the AFC title game. So some Longhorn ties there. So we'll discuss maybe some lessons learned from the Super Bowl teams, some of the things that they execute really well that maybe the Longhorns can take some notes from. We'll talk about that, some of the trends that have led to this Super Bowl matchup, and maybe how they could have some outside effect or maybe some tie connection to the Longhorns. So we'll get into that and dive a little bit deeper into it. So we got a lot to talk about. We don't have a lot of time to do it. So before we get started, let's not waste any time. Let's thank our very special sponsor. It is John Donovan, president of Longhorn Wealth Management Group. He is a proud Texas Exes Life member, and his wife and all 6 of John's siblings also UT grads. So we're talking about lifetime Longhorns, and they are proud of it. This deep Longhorn family tradition led John to dedicate his firm to providing total wealth management for Texas alumni, employees, family, and friends. John is a certified financial planner who has spent over 30 years, folks, 3 decades providing investment, retirement, insurance, and estate planning services and solutions to all of his clients. The Longhorn Wealth team fired up about how good the Texas football team was last year, and everybody's fired up about how good they're going to be in 2024, especially in the SEC. And we know that all the talk about the transfer portal and high school recruiting. So likewise, John Donovan and his Longhorn Wealth team want to encourage everyone on the On Texas football family to let Longhorn Wealth jumpstart your 2024 with a financial future with a free 90-minute consultation to explore how Longhorn Wealth can help you develop, maximize, and protect your tax, fee, and tax-efficient retirement income. So please give John Donovan and his Longhorn Wealth team a call at 972-707-4900 or visit longhornwealth.net. That's 972-707-4900 or visit longhornwealth.net. All right, before we get started here, the first thing I want to talk about is the latest addition to the Longhorn support staff. Brandon, I hope I get his name correct. I'm not sure if you know how to pronounce it better than I do. Is it Hubert or Huppert?
I've been saying Hubert, but I could be off.
You seen is it Hubert?
That's what I've been saying.
Okay, I want to make sure. Okay, we don't want to disrespect the man. He's gonna be helping us out. So he's coming from actually Oregon State, if I'm not mistaken. Spent 1 season there at Oregon State. Has got a history back with PK. Played under PK even at Boise State, if I'm not mistaken. That's the D line when PK was the D line coach there, and also was a grad assistant at Washington under PK when he and Chris Peterson hooked up at Washington. What are your thoughts about him coming in as a defensive analyst? I believe at one point also he was a director of player development at Washington too, had risen through the ranks. Texas bringing on 2 defensive minds as analysts. Last year, they almost had a perfect kind of synergy, if you will. Joe DeCamillis, who took a job with South Carolina as the special teams coach there. Between Joe DeCamillis, Paul Christ, in last season, and Payam Sadat, you had a defensive guy, special teams guy, and an offensive guy. This time, 2 defensive guys. I'm sure you can bring in other analysts too, but what are your thoughts about Texas bringing in another guy with ties, not only to the defensive line, that's where he played, and I believe he coached there a little bit as an assistant D-line coach, but also a guy with ties to PK on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, first off, I love the fact that he has ties to PK. I think anytime you can get guys in the system who have been familiar with the system, it only helps expedite some of the processes and teachings that go into the week-to-week preparation. I look at it in the sense of, the PK's defense has evolved over time, but I think at times you can go back and almost be a refresher of getting him back into campus with Coach PK and saying, hey, remember back in 2014, we were doing this a little bit differently and it worked. Maybe we should go back to that. There's a little things that I think you can revisit in the sense of you would be echoing, old tendencies and schemes with, PK and his staff. So I'm with it. At Oregon State specifically, I thought that their defense had been the staple of their team over the last couple of years. Corvallis is not an easy place to play, and they really adopted that kind of motto. Whenever you go up to play at Oregon State, that defense is going to be the one that's really leading the way. I know they had DJU there. Obviously, Silas Bolden was the one that making all the plays on the offensive side of the ball. But in the grand scheme of what their team brought to the table, it was a hard-nosed defense that was very sound schematically. They didn't bust coverages very often, and they were going to make you work to get down the field. They had a couple guys drafted last year. I had a defensive back drafted in the 6th round, I believe. They have a couple more expect to be hearing their names called this upcoming April. So I liked what they've been doing on the defensive side of the ball. And if you can poach a guy who's kind of leached onto some other staffs and done well on the field and still coming back to PK where he has experience and time with him in the past, it feels like a very strong hire here.
After his stint with PK and Chris Peterson in Washington, and from 2013 to 2017 as a quality control coach on the defensive side of the ball, he was hired by Dan Hawkins to coach the defensive line at UC Davis. And that group actually ended up having a program record 37 sacks that season, to your point about him being a part of some defensive staff that had some success. And then he went on to Washington to be the director of player development, and later on at Oregon State to be there as well as the director of player development. So, but on the defensive side of the ball, on the D-line, you're right. Maybe he's a guy that can help you kind of streamline some of the growing pains with some of the younger players, also having played in that system and also been a quality control coach in that same system. So Texas beefing up the support staff. That's one of the stories that I wanted to get into. Another one is the draft. I know we're a long way away from it, so we got plenty of time to break down the draft, and I promise you we will from every different angle, because I'm kind of a mock slut. I love mock drafts. I'll look at any mock draft. You got a mock draft, I don't care what your name is. I don't care if you got an egg as your avatar on Twitter. I'll probably check out your mock draft. That's just who I am. I'm all about the mock drafts. But there are some who are more respected than others. Dane Brugler is among the most respected of the mock drafters, draft analysts out there. And he does great work. And I was wondering, I've been talking to a friend of mine about who's going to be the first Longhorn drafted. And it seems like a lot of the mocks had A.D. Mitchell as the first Longhorn drafted. And I can totally understand that, because there's going to be a run on wide receivers. I believe Mel Kiper has, if I'm not mistaken, he has 7 wide receivers going total in the first round. He's got 3 of them, I believe, going in the top 10. Like he's got a yes, between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors, and Romo Odunze. He's got, I believe it's 3 in his top. If it's not 10, it's in his top 11 or 12. But he's got 7 in the first round. And I believe A.D. Mitchell was the last of the wide receivers that he had in his mock draft, or one of the last wide receivers he had in his mock draft. But Dane Brugler believes that another Longhorn might be drafted first. He's got a little man crush on Byron Murphy. And he tweeted this out earlier this week. Seeing Texas D tackle Byron Murphy appear in the top 20 of more and more mock drafts. No surprise there. Unfortunately, no Murphy this week at the Senior Bowl. He's resting a minor late season injury. Will be good for the combine. What are your thoughts, CJ? I know you pay attention to a lot of mock drafts, and I know you do some draft analysis yourself. Who's going to be the first Longhorn drafted? It seems like right now it's a 2-player race here between either A.D. Mitchell or Byron Murphy. But going in the top 20 is probably as high as I've seen any Longhorn be projected to be drafted in the next upcoming draft.
It's exciting that we're in this conversation to have which guy go first round. Who's going to go first in the first round? That's exciting now. Signs of a healthy program, as we've talked about. I've talked about this on Twitter a little bit. I had Byron Murphy as the first Longhorn off the board, followed by A.D. Mitchell and then Xavier Worthy right after. So I'm looking at it in a sense that I think the wide receiving talent that Texas is producing is going to go before what we'll see with a Tavondre Sweat even. So Byron Murphy's my number one guy, and I've all of a sudden started thinking about it a little differently. Travis Kelce retires. Chiefs are picking at 31 or 32. Could they go get the next tight end for that system with Jatavian Sanders? He might jump into that conversation as well. But I think by 31 or 32, you're going to be looking at Byron Murphy, about 20 picks, about 15, maybe 20 picks already having heard his name called and very happy, going in the top 15. So I have Byron Murphy number one, and then A.D. Mitchell. I think some team is going to take a reach for him in that back end of that first round. You look at Baltimore, they could use a big body wide receiver. Certainly, I think adding him to a team, in that range would help give a solidified number two, potential to have a ceiling of a wide receiver number one. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. But Byron Murphy to me is probably that top guy. I think, and I think that margin's growing by a good bit. Had he been at the Senior Bowl, I think it would have been a no-brainer. Like, he would absolutely have been the top Longhorn take in this draft.
Yeah, no, it seems to be, it is trending that way. And yeah, I'm looking at Mel Kiper's latest mock draft. Obviously, he keeps updating these things like every month or so, or every 2 weeks or so. But in his latest mock draft, 7 wide receivers taken in the first round. A.D. Mitchell, the 6th wide receiver. He's got him taken 28th overall to the Buffalo Bills, who also are probably going to end up needing a wide receiver. Yep, and but this is unfortunate for AD being drafted in the first round is never unfortunate. But he has AD Mitchell being drafted 1 pick ahead of, which ain't gonna happen here. This mock was before the championship game, but he had him going before ahead of Troy Franklin Jr. And Troy Franklin Jr. was going to the Chiefs. So he's got the Chiefs picking a wide receiver. Kind of what your thoughts? The Chiefs will pick offense, it seems, early on. Are they going to pick Travis Kelce's replacement? Or are they going to try to pick a wide receiver, which they need one desperately? Man, if you're A.D. Mitchell, you pray that you drop down to wherever the Kansas City Chiefs are picking, because that's where they're projecting him to be drafted, right around that area where the Chiefs are going to be picking. That would be magnificent. Or you could have my man X-Man be a guy drafted early in the 2nd round. I will say this. I heard Mel Kiper on NFL Live, and they asked Mel Kiper, who are the most underrated wide receivers in this draft? Because I've always said wide receiver is the deepest position in football at any level. And every year in the draft, they'll say wide receiver is the deepest position in this draft. That's just because it's the deepest position in football, period. Yeah. And they asked Mel Kiper, hey, who are the underrated receivers in this draft? Who are going to be the great value pickups later on? And he said the Texas wide receivers. He straight up said the Texas guys. I like them. And he talked about X-Man, and he talked about A.D. Mitchell. So it looks like Texas, A.D. Mitchell or X-Man end up going to a really, really good spot, meaning a good system, good offense, potentially even with a good quarterback already. But yeah, there you go. So Byron Murphy right now, and I got to say, I think this just, if Byron Murphy and you and Dane Brugler seem to be on the same page, if he's not taken as the first Longhorn drafted, Dane Brugler's going to lose it. He's going to have a Twitter temper tantrum. Just a couple of tweets about Dane Brugler and the man crush he has on Byron Murphy. This is what he tweeted in December about Byron Murphy. He said, a few years from now, it won't be surprising when D tackle Byron Murphy is the best pro from this Texas defense. Initial quickness, vertical push, body flexibility. He also tweeted out earlier this month, Byron Murphy with number 16 overall in my mock, and I think he'll be somewhere in the mid-first range. No D tackle was more consistently disruptive on film this season versus both the pass and the run than Murphy. Love his quickness and handwork. I mean, he's pretty much got him close to being the first D tackle off the board.
Yeah,
if not right. I mean, if you're going to be drafted 16, the way, because this draft is all about quarterbacks, wide receivers, and, right? And there's some tackles thrown in there. He might have the first D tackle taken off the board, and obviously one of the first defenders taken off the board. That would be huge for Texas. That would be huge. All right, moving on here. Let's move on to another topic because I want to make sure that we get to as many topics here as we can here in Talkin Ball. The first topic I want to get to here is about I hate to bring it up, about the horns down. It's back. It reared its ugly head again. We know Rodney Terry had to deal with the blowback because he tried to discipline another coach's team when they did the horns down in the handshake line after they lost to Central Florida. And then Rodney Terry did the classic thing. He apologized, moved on, and they ended up going on a winning streak as a result. Well, they lost to BYU over the weekend. and a horns down controversy came up again. This time, BYU fans spelled out horns down on T-shirts. All right, and there was an individual letter on every shirt, and they at one point were asked to remove the shirts. And at one point, Twitter believed that they were asked to remove the shirts because of a request from the Longhorn administration or from the coaches or something like that, which would have been crazy. Turns out that wasn't the case. Their head coach specified in the post game that you talked about this, CJ. I'm sure you got some better insight because I know you will follow Texas basketball closely. That it was actually BYU. They felt like it was something that was unbecoming of their fan base. They felt like they should have been. It was a move that was not a classy move, and they thought that they didn't want to put that out there as something that would go viral and potentially paint their fans in a bad light. But the Longhorns got, I think, most of the negative attention about it because people thought that was something the Longhorns had requested and demanded. It was not. Turns out that was BYU acting on their own accord. Another horns down controversy. What are your thoughts, CJ? Give it to me real quick. Give it to me.
I hate it, man. I mean, I hate that this is a story. I hate that we're sitting here talking about it because it's college sports. These kids are 19, 20. They've been up. They're excited to see their top 25 team play one of the bigger teams that they have on their schedule at home. Like, they're excited for this. This is what you want if you're an athletics department. You want your fans to come out to show up to the big games, and you want them to be excited that your team is performing well on the field, and obviously to be a disruptive, rowdy bunch.
Yep.
To make it a difficult place to play. Like, that's the ultimate goal. Why take away the fun? That's part of it. I'm all for trash talk. I'm all for competitive, taunting in a way. Like, I love that. I love, when DBs stand up after a big play and they do the strap, or they let people know that's an incomplete pass. Like, yeah, you made a great play. Celebrate that. I love in the sense that when you play big rivals, there's added emotion. There's added passion. Yeah. That game should mean something more to you because Texas is walking through the door. Texas should be, at its height of emotion anytime they play Oklahoma or Texas A&M. Those games mean something more. There's an extra history and really track record of playing one another because those games mean something. Those rivalries are so outstanding that's what helps make college sports so outstanding. And I think it's so silly. Like, where does the line then become? When you play Oklahoma, can you not say that OU sucks whenever you like what's going on? Like, yep. you have in your fight song goodbye to A&M. Like, that all about it is in a way kind of a little playful slap at opposing rivals. This is so silly, and Texas did get a little bit of the bad rep because they didn't request for this to be the case. They by all accounts, I didn't see anything on Texas's Twitter or anything that said, hey, Texas wasn't happy with this. Credit to BYU, I guess, for taking the initiative to take it down, but who cares? Like, that's exactly. I think it's awesome. Yeah. It's part of the game, and I'm all for it. I want more of it.
I agree. I don't know. Honestly, BYU's in the wrong here too. They shouldn't have forced those young students to take down or take off their shirts or whatever they were doing. They should have been able to do it as long as it wasn't offensive, as long as it wasn't something that
horns down. Like, come on.
It wasn't an expletive. It wasn't a slur or anything like that. It was horns down.
That's how it's being treated as. It's crazy.
I can't believe BYU did that. Honestly, this is BYU's fault because they're the ones who obviously were a little overly sensitive about the horns down. I don't know why they would be. That made no sense at all.
Yeah, I started daydreaming a little bit. I was like, how schools can really get at Texas is they start planning this a little bit just to come out and remove it and make Texas again look like they were the ones that complained and asked to get it taken down. That's how you say goodbye to them as they leave the conference. Make it a bigger deal in the sense of where it was set up in a way, like an inside job.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because when I first looked on Twitter and saw it, I was like, oh man, please tell me that's not happening. Please tell me that we didn't just have two back-to-back horns down controversies that both seem silly. And turns out, no, Texas lost the basketball game. But
against newcomers in the conference too. It's crazy. Like, these aren't even teams that have history with Texas.
No, it is. It does seem like maybe it was I don't know. It seemed like there was a hatchet job, that there was somebody out to kind of paint Texas in a bad light the way it all went down. I don't know where it came from that Texas requested that they take the shirts off, but that was the narrative on social media. That narrative, as we just pointed out, a false narrative. But I always say this, so we'll move on. I know people don't want to talk about the horns down for very long, is that it is the greatest form of free media in college sports. I mean, everybody knows what it means. Everybody knows they're talking about the Longhorns. And I think most Longhorn fans understand that. They understand that it's just free publicity, free media for the brand, and overall, it's good. And as long as you're winning, it makes the opposing team and the opposing fan base look silly. But when Texas is losing, I think that's when it hurts. It hurts when you're actually losing, because I think that's when it hits home. Because you're literally down. You just lost the game or whatever it is. Like I said, I've never experienced the horns down when we won the game. They usually only do it, except for OU. I'll admit, OU, they'll do it whether they lose or win. They don't care. Okay, this is the final topic here. I want to talk about lessons that could be learned from the Super Bowl matchup. And I think obviously there are ties. Texas, lifetime Longhorn, Cal Shanahan coaching the 49ers. You got Charles Omenihu, who is playing for the Kansas City Chiefs, also played for the 49ers at one point. But I always look at the formulas, right? The football formulas of these teams, and almost what can be extrapolated, what you can learn in terms of philosophically how these teams execute and what they do really well. And one thing I think, and I'm just looking at these teams, specifically, I'm looking at the 49ers right now, just kind of looking at different things that they do well, that Sark can kind of take some of his philosophy to the next level, evolve it. Red zone was a huge issue for Sark this year. I mean, red zone offense, touchdown percentage in the red zone, Texas remained one of the worst in the country. They're around 120th in touchdown percentage of red zone, which is amazing considering how prolific and explosive the offense was. They never really figured it out. Came back to haunt them, of course, in the last game in the Sugar Bowl. San Fran actually leads the NFL in touchdown percentage in the red zone. They finished the season at 67% touchdown percentage in the red zone, followed by Detroit, actually. There you go. It matters. It's money time. It matters scoring down there. I think Miami was third. Miami actually, last 3 games, they were 75% touchdown percentage in the red zone. My point is, I know Sark does a lot of great rabbit holing in the offseason. He admits he steals concepts, and he loves to watch some of the best offenses and try his best to pair up concepts that will match up in his offense. And he loves that Shanahan coaching tree. If he wants to improve the red zone offense, the Shanahan coaching tree is a great place to start. San Fran and Miami. Those are 2 of the 3 best red zone offenses. Hell, in Detroit too. Might as well, you can go there too. Detroit. That's where you start. San Fran, Detroit, Miami. Yeah.
I love that. My biggest takeaway along with the red zone there is having watched those 2 games yesterday and started sitting there thinking, what's the deal with this Ravens offense? This was a team who ran the ball as well as anybody in the league this entire season. They only had 6 rushing attempts to running backs the entire day in a game in which it was raining sideways for a little bit in the second half. Why did they abandon what had basically brought them to this far in the playoffs? The running game. That was the biggest staple of it. You thought Gus Edwards and Justice Hill and this whole group of running backs was going to be ultimately what helped Lamar Jackson become such a dual threat, with the run game, the read option. Completely abandoned. I know Texas fans would have liked to see a little bit more running in the Washington game because it felt like anytime they put the ball on the ground, there was success there. Well, Gus Edwards had 3 carries yesterday for 20 yards. That's a pretty good, 6.7 yard per carry average. You go back to what helped be, a big staple of your complementary approach offensively, and then you take it all away. Yeah. I think sticking with what got you there in the big games is a big component and something else that you can take away from having watched that game as well.
Dance with what brung you, right?
Absolutely.
The late great DK used to say. I'm glad you brought that up because we can kind of end it on this note because I can go to the AFC side of things and something that I recognize that I think Texas, PK can even learn lessons from. And I saw this little note. If you go look at the personnel groupings on defense, that Kansas City ran. According to Dan Orlovsky, they ran 6 different personnel groupings on defense. You saw them in their base. They ran a 3-3-5. They ran a 4-2-5. They ran a 4-1-6. They threw a ton out there at Lamar Jackson just to force him to try to process things. And getting back to your point, if they'd have run the football, they could have dictated more of the game and dictated the tempo of the game, but they didn't run the football and they put it in Lamar's hands, which he's the MVP. But that's when all of those exotic looks, all those creative looks for Spagnuolo, that's when they play a huge role. If you're just running the football, you almost force the defense to have to play you a certain way. It's like, nah, I got to play them in base. They're running the football down our throat. But when you abandon the run on your own, you almost did them a favor.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how the Packers beat the Cowboys.
Yeah, and they're sick. I think they have the 6th highest blitz rate Spagnuolo does in all of the NFL. So why wouldn't you just run the football against a blitz-heavy team? But I think the lesson to be learned from PK is not very diverse. There's not a lot of diversity defensively. I do think they want to get into more multiplicity defensively, whether it be the skill sets of players, which we know Sark's buzzword has been versatility, but also the defense overall. And I've talked about it. They want to be more malleable defensively. And that comes with having defenders that can be more versatile. And I think that would be the lesson to be learned. Because you're right, that the Ravens, that was probably the biggest standout stat or nugget, is that they had running backs had 6 rushes. The running back did. Like, I don't even know how that is great. That makes no sense at all. Like, that's wild. That's crazy.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
I'm with you on that. That's a lesson to be learned, ladies and gentlemen, from championship weekend. All right, before we get out of here, let's say thank you to our sponsor once again. We appreciate John Donovan and the Longhorn Wealth team. John Donovan is a lifetime Longhorn, president of Longhorn Wealth Management Group. John is a proud lifetime Longhorn, Texas Ex's Life member, and his wife and all 6 of his siblings are also UT grads. So it is a deep Longhorn tradition that gives them a lot of pride and has given them inspiration to dedicate himself and his firm to providing total wealth management for Texas alumni, employees, family, and friends. John is a certified financial planner who has spent over 3 decades, 30 years, folks, providing investment, retirement, insurance, and estate planning services and solutions to all of his clients. The Longhorn World team is fired up about Coach Sark's incredible start to the 2024 season with all these new additions through the transfer portal and through recruiting. And so they likewise want to encourage everyone in the On Texas football family to let Longhorn Wealth jumpstart your 2024 financial future with a free 90-minute consultation to explore how Longhorn Wealth can help you develop, maximize, and protect your tax-free and tax-efficient retirement income. Please give them a call today. John Donovan and his Longhorn Wealth team are waiting for your call. 972-707-4900. That's 972-707-4900, or visit longhornwealth.net. All right, CJ, once again, thank you for the time, brother, and thank you for the knowledge. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Had a blast. Talkin Ball.
And no doubt. And until next time, folks, thank you guys for joining us. And until next time, as always, hook 'em.